When aliens discovered why human diplomats never carry weapons, the Nexus station hung in the void between star systems like a metallic flower, its 12 arms stretching toward different galactic sectors. For the first time in recorded history, representatives from every major spacefaring civilization had gathered in one place. The first Galactic Peace Summit was either going to unite the galaxy or start the biggest war anyone had ever seen. High Commander Zixithara of the Kepler Hive clicked her mandibles nervously as she surveyed the main docking bay through compound eyes. Her ceremonial war armor gleamed with integrated plasma cannons, and her personal guard of 12 warrior drones stood perfectly synchronized behind her, each carrying enough firepower to level a small city. This was how civilized species attended diplomatic functions, prepared for anything. The Gorlan delegation had arrived first, naturally. War Chief Thok stood nearly 8 feet tall, his gray hide scarred from countless battles. His massive hands rested casually on twin gravity hammers that could crush steel, while his honor guard displayed an impressive array of molecular disruptors and neural scramblers. The Gorlans believed that respect was earned through visible strength, and their weapons were a testament to that philosophy. Even the intellectually advanced Veltari had come prepared. Prime Intellect Veltar appeared serene in his flowing robes, but Zixthara's enhanced vision could detect the energy signatures of at least 15 concealed weapon systems built into his AI-enhanced body. His robotic attendants moved with the fluid precision of combat units disguised as servants. "The humans should be arriving soon," announced Station Administrator Quill, a nervous Centauran whose blue skin had turned pale with stress. Their diplomatic vessel just cleared the outer security perimeter. Zixthara turned all 4 of her primary eyes toward the docking bay entrance. Humans were the newest species to achieve interstellar travel, barely 2 centuries since their first faster-than-light flight. Most galactic powers considered them primitive upstarts, technologically impressive but lacking the refined brutality that marked truly dangerous civilizations. The airlock hissed open, and the human delegation entered. Zixthara blinked in confusion. Ambassador Elena Vasquez walked into the bay wearing a simple dark blue uniform, with no visible armor or protective systems. She was a small woman by human standards, probably in her 50s, with graying hair pulled back in a practical style. Behind her walked 2 more humans, a man and a woman in matching gray uniforms that looked more like formal wear than military gear. That was it. 3 humans. No weapons visible anywhere. War Chief Thok's laughter boomed across the docking bay. "Is this some kind of joke? Where are their guards, their weapons?" The male human guard, his uniform bore the name Morrison, smiled politely. "We are the guards, sir. Captain Jake Morrison and Sergeant Amy Chen, Diplomatic Security Detail." Prime Intellect Veltar's optical sensors focused on the humans with obvious confusion. "Forgive my directness, but our sensors detect no energy, signatures consistent with modern weaponry. How do you intend to protect your ambassador?" Sergeant Chen, a compact Asian woman with alert dark eyes, shrugged. "Same way we always do, by doing our job." The formal reception proceeded with traditional diplomatic courtesy, but the atmosphere crackled with tension. Every few minutes, Zixithara noticed other delegation guards glancing at the humans with expressions ranging from amusement to outright concern. The Bruthan Warcast whispered among themselves, pointing at the unarmored humans. The crystalline collective's energy beings flickered with what she recognized as confusion patterns. The summit's opening ceremony took place in the Grand Assembly Hall, a magnificent chamber designed to accommodate the diverse physiological needs of dozens of species. Atmospheric processors maintained separate environmental zones. Gravity generators created comfortable conditions for beings ranging from gas cloud entities to rock-based life forms, and universal translators hummed quietly to ensure perfect communication. "Ambassador." Vasquez took her place at the human delegation table, with Morrison and Chen standing casually behind her chairs. Around the circular chamber, other delegations arranged themselves with military precision, their guards forming protective formations bristling with visible deterrents. High Mediator Kethvar, an ancient and respected Altarian, called the session to order. We gather today to discuss the possibility of lasting peace among our civilizations. The galaxy has grown too small for endless warfare, and too rich for any single species to claim dominion over all others. The opening statements proceeded predictably. Each species outlined their territorial claims, defensive needs, and non-negotiable positions. Trade routes were disputed, mining rights argued over, and historical grievances aired with diplomatic precision. The humans listened more than they spoke. When Ambassador Vasquez did contribute, her comments were brief and practical. She asked clarifying questions about resource allocation, suggested compromise positions that seemed to benefit everyone equally, and demonstrated a surprising understanding of interspecies politics for such a young civilization. Your species shows wisdom beyond your years, Ambassador, High Mediator Keith Var commented during a brief recess. Most newcomers to galactic politics begin with aggressive expansion demands. We've had practice with international relations on our homeworld, Vasquez replied. We learned some hard lessons about the cost of constant conflict. War Chief Thok overheard the exchange and approached with heavy footsteps that echoed through the chamber. His honor guard moved with him, hands never straying far from their weapons. Humans speak of peace, but peace is for the weak. The strong take what they need. Captain Morrison stepped slightly forward, not threatening but simply repositioning himself between Thok and the ambassador. The movement was so smooth and natural that it almost seemed accidental. Strength takes many forms, War Chief. The strongest people I know never needed to prove it to anyone. Thok's yellow eyes narrowed. Pretty words, but when raiders come, for your colonies, will you talk them to death? If talking doesn't work, Sergeant Chen said quietly from her position by the wall, we have other options. What options? Thok gestured broadly at her clearly unarmored form. You carry no weapons, you wear no protection. What exactly would you do against a real threat? Chen tilted her head slightly, studying the massive Gorlan warrior with the same expression a scientist might use to examine an interesting specimen. Depends on the threat, sir. Every situation requires a different response. Prime Intellect Veltar's processing units whirred audibly. This is fascinating. Your species appears to have developed diplomatic security protocols that rely entirely on what exactly? Good intentions? Ambassador Vasquez smiled. You could say that. We've found that the right approach can prevent most situations from becoming violent in the first place. And when prevention fails? High Commander Zixathera asked, genuinely curious. Her warrior drones had analyzed the humans continuously since their arrival, finding no hidden weapons, no energy shields, no enhanced physiological modifications that might explain their confidence. Then we adapt, Morrison said simply. The afternoon session grew more heated as territorial disputes were addressed in detail. The Corvin Star Empire demanded access to shipping lanes that passed through claimed human space. The Zephyrian Union wanted mining rights to asteroids in systems humans had colonized. The Void Touched insisted that humans were expanding too rapidly and needed to be contained before they became a threat. Through it all, the human delegation remained calm and reasonable. They offered compromises, suggested shared solutions, and consistently looked for ways to give everyone something they wanted. Other species began to mutter among themselves about human naivety. They think this is some kind of academic exercise, War Chief Thok growled to his aide. Wait until they face real pressure, they'll break like glass. The pressure came sooner than expected. High Commander Zixathera found herself studying the human guards with increasing fascination. Captain Morrison appeared relaxed, almost bored, but she noticed that his eyes constantly tracked movement throughout the chamber. He seemed to catalog every guard's position, every delegate's posture, every shift in the room's dynamics. Sergeant Chen looked like she was barely paying attention, occasionally making notes on a small device, but Zixathera realized that the woman was actually monitoring everything that happened behind the human delegation while Morrison watched. The front. They were working as a team with unconscious coordination that spoke of extensive training and experience. But training for what? They had no weapons to coordinate, no equipment to manage, no battle formations to maintain. The mystery deepened when the Nexathian delegation arrived late, making a dramatic entrance that was clearly designed to intimidate. The Nexathians were energy beings who had learned to inhabit mechanical bodies, and their current forms resembled walking tanks, bristling with enough firepower to destroy a small space station. Their leader, Combat Prime Xeris, claimed a voice that sounded like grinding metal. The Nexathian Empire does not recognize human territorial claims in the Outer Rim. We will take what we require for expansion, with or without galactic approval. The temperature in the chamber seemed to drop several degrees. Every delegation guard suddenly became more alert, energy weapons powering up with barely audible whines. The diplomatic dance had just become significantly more dangerous. Ambassador, Vasquez looked up from her notes calmly. That would be unfortunate, Combat Prime. I hope we can find a solution that serves everyone's needs without resorting to conquest. Combat Prime Xeris's mechanical form shifted to focus directly on the human delegation. Your species fascinates me, Ambassador. You speak of solutions while your guards carry nothing more dangerous than their bare hands. What exactly do you plan to do if diplomacy fails? Morrison and Chen exchanged a glance that lasted perhaps half a second. In that brief moment, Zixathara saw something pass between them. Not words, not gestures, but perfect understanding. They had just communicated more effectively than her entire warrior drone collective could manage with full neural linkage. Well, Morrison said thoughtfully, we'd probably have to get creative. The first Galactic Peace Summit had just begun, and already the humans were proving that everything the galaxy thought it knew about diplomatic security might be completely wrong. The moment every alien realized they misunderstood human strength, the Asana tension in the Grand Assembly Hall had been building for hours. What started as routine diplomatic posturing had evolved into something far more dangerous. Combat Prime Xeris stood like a metallic monument to warfare, his energy readings making every sensor in the room scream warnings about imminent violence. War Chief, Thok decided he had seen enough human weakness for one day. This is ridiculous, he announced, rising from his seat with a sound like grinding stone. His massive form cast shadows across the chamber as atmospheric processors adjusted to compensate for his elevated heat signature. We sit here debating with creatures who cannot even protect themselves. How can we trust species that understand nothing of strength? Ambassador Vasquez looked up calmly from her diplomatic notes. I'm not sure I understand your concern, War Chief. Could you be more specific? Thok's yellow eyes blazed with contempt. Your guards. They are an insult to this gathering. Every civilized species brings protection worthy of their station. You bring, what? Servants? Clerks? He gestured dismissively at Morrison and Chen. They would not last 10 seconds against real warriors. Captain Morrison remained perfectly still, but Sergeant Chen shifted almost imperceptibly. To most observers, it looked like she was simply adjusting her position for comfort. High Commander Zixathara, however, noticed that Chen's new stance provided clear sightlines to every major threat in the room, while positioning her to protect 3 different escape routes simultaneously. Our security team is quite capable, Ambassador Vasquez replied mildly. But we prefer to solve problems without violence when possible. Without violence? Thok's laughter boomed across the chamber. Child, the galaxy runs on violence. The strong take what they need, the weak serve or perish. This is the natural order. Prime Intellect Veltar's optical sensors focused on the developing confrontation. Perhaps we should return to the formal agenda. These philosophical differences need not disrupt our negotiations. No, Thok said, taking a step toward the human delegation. His honor guard moved with him, hands now resting openly on weapon grips. I think it is time for a demonstration. These humans need to understand their place in the galactic hierarchy. Morrison finally moved, and the movement was like watching water flow uphill, so smooth and unexpected that it seemed to defy physics. He didn't step forward or backward, didn't reach for weapons that weren't there, didn't adopt any recognizable combat stance. Instead, he simply repositioned himself so that Thok would have to go through him to reach Ambassador Vasquez. The change in the room's dynamics was immediate and profound. Every alien guard suddenly realized they were watching something they didn't understand. Morrison wasn't challenging Thok. Challenging would have been aggressive, obvious, traditional. He was simply there, unavoidable, immovable, like a mountain that had appeared in Thok's path without anyone noticing. Interesting technique, Combat Prime Xeris observed, his mechanical voice carrying a note of curiosity. No aggressive posturing, no threat display, yet you have effectively blocked the war chief's approach. How do you accomplish this without triggering his combat reflexes? Morrison smiled politely. Practice, sir. Lots and lots of practice. Thok snarled, his massive hands clenching into fists that could shatter armor plating. You think positioning will save you? I have crushed opponents twice your size. I'm sure you have, Morrison agreed conversationally. Size matters in a lot of situations, but not all of them. The war chief's eyes narrowed dangerously. You mock me. Not at all. I respect your combat record tremendously. 47 individual victories in ritual combat. Leader of the Gorlan. Expansion Wars, Conqueror of the Bitter Moons, very impressive. Every being in the chamber felt their attention focus like a laser beam on the human captain. How did he know Thok's exact combat record? The Bitter Moons campaign was classified Gorlan military history. Even most Gorlan citizens didn't know the details. Thok's expression shifted from anger to suspicion. How do you know about the moons? Research, Morrison said simply. Know your audience? They taught us in diplomatic school. Understanding who you're talking to prevents misunderstandings. Sergeant Chen spoke without looking up from her notes. 47 victories, but the interesting number is 0. 0 what? Demanded Thok. 0 defeats in single combat, Chen continued, her voice carrying the same casual tone someone might use to discuss the weather. But your war record shows 3 tactical retreats when facing multiple opponents who used coordinated psychological warfare instead of direct confrontation. The silence in the chamber was deafening. Chen had just revealed that she knew classified details about Gorlan military strategy that should have been impossible for humans to access. More importantly, she had identified a specific weakness in Thok's combat methodology without making it sound like a threat. Combat Prime Xeris's mechanical form tilted slightly. Fascinating. Your species appears to have developed intelligence gathering, capabilities that rival our own computational networks. How extensive is your information on other delegations? Morrison and Chen exchanged another of those lightning-fast glances. This time, Zixthara realized what she was seeing. They weren't just communicating. They were running through contingency plans with perfect coordination. Each micro-expression, each subtle shift in posture, represented tactical decisions being made and confirmed in real time. We believe in being prepared, Ambassador Vasquez said diplomatically. Understanding leads to better outcomes for everyone. High Commander Zixthara felt her warrior drones shift nervously behind her. What exactly do you understand about the Kepler hive? Sergeant Chen finally looked up from her device, and her dark eyes met Zixthara's compound gaze directly. We understand that your collective consciousness gives you perfect tactical coordination, but makes you vulnerable to unexpected individual actions. We understand that your warrior drones are programmed to respond to threat patterns, but human movement doesn't match any pattern in their databases. We understand that you're curious about our methods because your hive mind has never encountered beings who can coordinate without shared consciousness. The implications hit Zixthara like a physical blow. These humans had analyzed her species, fundamental strengths and weaknesses with terrifying accuracy. They knew exactly how her warrior drones would respond to different stimuli. They understood the philosophical gaps in collective thinking that most species never recognized. War Chief Thok was growing tired of psychological games. Enough talk. You want to impress me with your research? Let me test your actual capabilities. Moved with surprising speed for such a massive being, his hand shooting out toward Ambassador Vasquez in what appeared to be an aggressive grab. It wasn't intended to cause serious harm, more of a dominance display designed to force the human guards into action. What happened next would be discussed in military academies across the galaxy for decades. Morrison intercepted Thok's massive arm without apparent effort, But instead of blocking or redirecting the attack, he did something that defied every combat manual ever written. He guided Thok's momentum into a position where the war chief found himself off balance, overextended, and completely vulnerable, but without feeling like he had been attacked or defeated. To outside observers, it looked like Thok had simply stumbled. The war chief himself felt like he had lost his footing due to his own clumsiness, but every trained military mind in the chamber recognized what they had just witnessed. Perfect combat redirection that left the aggressor confused rather than injured or humiliated. "Careful there," Morrison said, steadying Thok with gentle pressure that somehow guided the massive warrior back to a stable stance. "These gravity generators can be tricky if you're not used to them." Thok stared at the human captain with growing amazement. He had just been neutralized so smoothly that he couldn't even be certain it had been intentional. No pain, no damage, no loss of face, just a moment of confusion followed by apparent helpfulness from his target. Combat Prime Xeris's sensors were operating at maximum sensitivity. "Remarkable. You redirected a direct assault while maintaining plausible deniability. The attacker cannot claim to have been attacked, yet the attack was completely neutralized. How do you train for such precision?" "You start with the right philosophy," Chen said, finally closing her device and giving the chamber her full attention. "Most security training focuses on ending threats quickly and decisively. We focus on ending them quietly and diplomatically. Prime." Intellect Veltar's processing units worked furiously to analyze what he had observed. "But surely there are situations where subtle redirection is insufficient. What happens when you face opponents who cannot be confused or misdirected?" Morrison and Chen shared one more of their instantaneous communications. This time, the message seemed to be, "Show them?" Chen nodded almost imperceptibly. "Well," Morrison said thoughtfully, "then things get complicated." The human security guards were about to demonstrate that complicated was a massive understatement. Why every species now fears unarmed human diplomats, High Commander Zixthera's warrior drones, suddenly went rigid, their collective consciousness detecting something that made no logical sense. Every advanced sensor in the Grand Assembly Hall was screaming warnings about imminent combat, but the readings were impossible to interpret. The humans hadn't moved. They hadn't drawn weapons. They hadn't activated any detectable systems. Yet, somehow the entire strategic situation in the chamber had shifted so dramatically that combat computers across the galaxy were having processing failures trying to analyze it. "What exactly is happening?" demanded Prime Intellect Veltar, his optical sensors spinning frantically as they tried to lock onto threat sources that didn't seem to exist. Sergeant Chen smiled for the first time since entering the station. It was not a reassuring expression. "You wanted to know what we do when subtle redirection isn't enough. The answer is, we stop being subtle." Captain Morrison cracked his knuckles casually, the small sound somehow echoing through the massive chamber like gunshots. "See, most species design their security around the assumption that threats come from weapons, armor, or enhanced biology. But humans learned a long time ago that the most dangerous weapon in any room is usually the person everyone underestimates." War Chief Thok found himself stepping backward without consciously deciding to do so. His warrior instincts were screaming that he was in mortal danger, but his rational mind couldn't identify any logical source of threat. "You still carry no weapons. You wear no armor. What exactly are you threatening us with?" "Threatening?" Ambassador Vasquez looked genuinely puzzled. "Captain Morrison, Sergeant Chen, are you threatening anyone?" "Not at all, ma'am," Morrison replied cheerfully. "We're just explaining our operational philosophy." Chen nodded in agreement. "It's educational. Everyone should understand how human, diplomatic security actually works." Combat Prime Xeris's mechanical form was analyzing the room with every sensor at his disposal. "I am detecting elevated stress hormones from every biological entity present, yet I can identify no source of danger. How are you accomplishing this psychological effect?" "It's not psychology," Chen said simply. "It's mathematics." She gestured around the chamber with fluid precision, and suddenly every alien guard realized she was pointing out specific details they had somehow missed. Exit routes, structural weak points, sight lines, equipment vulnerabilities, environmental hazards. The Grand Assembly Hall wasn't just a diplomatic meeting space. In the right hands, it was a complex three-dimensional puzzle with dozens of solutions for ending any conceivable threat. You see, Morrison continued conversationally, when humans developed interstellar travel, we had to decide how to handle galactic politics. We could follow the traditional model, bigger weapons, stronger armor, more aggressive posturing, but we had an advantage other species didn't. What advantage? High Commander Zixathera asked, though part of her hive mind was already calculating. Retreat vectors. We're really good at killing things, Chen said with the matter-of-fact tone of someone discussing the weather. Humans spent thousands of years perfecting warfare against our own species. We got very creative about it. Morrison nodded enthusiastically. Projectile weapons, energy weapons, chemical weapons, biological weapons, nuclear weapons, psychological, warfare, economic warfare, information warfare. We tried everything, and we got scary good at all of it. But then we realized something important, Chen added. Being the best at violence doesn't actually solve most problems. It just creates different problems. Prime intellect Veltar's processors were struggling with a logical paradox. You are simultaneously claiming to be expert warriors while advocating for non-violent solutions. This appears contradictory. Not contradictory, Ambassador Vasquez explained patiently. Evolved. We discovered that the most effective way to prevent violence is to be so obviously capable of it that nobody wants to test your limits. War Chief. Thok's combat instincts were still screaming warnings, but his curiosity was beginning to override his caution. You speak of capability, but I see no demonstration. Words are not proof. Chen tilted her head thoughtfully. Would you like a demonstration? War Chief? The question was asked so politely, so professionally, that it took several seconds for the implications to sink in. She wasn't challenging him to combat. She wasn't threatening him with violence. She was offering to show him something, the way a teacher might offer to explain a difficult concept to a student. What kind of demonstration? Thok asked carefully. Morrison looked around the chamber with the expression of someone examining available materials for a craft project. Well, let's see. We have approximately 47 potential weapons within easy reach, 12 different ways to disable the life support systems, 6 methods for creating structural failures that would be fatal to specific species, but harmless to others, and at least 23 ways to turn the diplomatic equipment into improvised combat systems. He paused thoughtfully. That's just the obvious stuff. If we get creative, the number goes up considerably. Combat Prime Xeris's mechanical voice carried a note of what might have been respect. You have analyzed this chamber as a potential battlefield with remarkable thoroughness, but analysis is not execution. Could you actually implement these theoretical capabilities? Chen checked her chronometer. How long do we have before the next scheduled session break? Approximately 12 minutes, responded Station Administrator Quill, his blue skin now completely pale with terror. That's more than enough time, Morrison said comfortably, though we probably shouldn't actually demonstrate lethal techniques at a peace summit. Sends the wrong message. Agreed, Chen nodded. How about something non-fatal but convincing? The two human guards looked at each other and seemed to reach some kind of decision through their mysterious communication method. Then Morrison walked over to the chamber's central holographic display system, the massive three-dimensional projector that had been showing star charts and territorial maps throughout the negotiations. He placed one hand on the control panel and looked back at the assembled delegates. This system is designed to be tamper-proof, right? Military-grade security, quantum encryption, physical access controls? Station Administrator Quill nodded nervously. The best defensive systems available. It would take a team of expert technicians hours to override the security protocols. Morrison smiled and pressed what appeared to be a completely random sequence of controls. The holographic display immediately shifted to show detailed schematics of every weapon and defensive system currently active in the chamber. Not only did it identify each delegate guard's equipment, but it provided tactical assessments of effective countermeasures, vulnerability analyses, and recommended engagement strategies. The silence that followed was profound. How? Whispered Prime Intellect Veltar. Pattern recognition, Chen explained helpfully. Humans are very good at finding patterns in complex systems. We also have excellent memories for technical specifications. Morrison was still manipulating the controls with casual expertise. Most security systems are designed by engineers who think like engineers. They create logical, systematic defenses. But humans don't always think logically. We think creatively. The holographic display shifted again, now showing real-time movement patterns of every being in the chamber. It tracked micro-expressions, stress indicators, weapon readiness states, and projected behavioral responses with disturbing accuracy. This is impossible, High Commander Zixthera managed. These systems are not networked. They do not share data. You cannot be accessing multiple secure databases simultaneously. Chen shrugged. We're not accessing anything. We're just using the display system to show information we already collected through observation and analysis. You memorize the technical specifications for our weapons? Combat Prime Xeris demanded. Not just yours, Morrison replied cheerfully. Everyone's. It's part of our basic diplomatic preparation. Know your audience, understand their capabilities, prepare for all possible scenarios. War Chief Thok finally found his voice again. You have been analyzing us as potential enemies from the moment you arrived. Not enemies, Ambassador Vasquez corrected gently. Variables. Every diplomatic situation involves multiple variables that could shift the outcome. Our security team prepares for all possible shifts, but you could have killed any of us at any time, Zixthera said, her hive mind struggling to process the implications. Probably, Chen agreed. But why would we want to? Dead diplomats don't sign peace treaties. Morrison stepped away from the holographic controls, leaving the display showing a simple message in multiple languages. Peaceful cooperation preferred. You see, he explained, most species approach galactic politics from a position of strength through superior firepower. Humans tried that approach for thousands of years. It works, but it's inefficient. You spend enormous resources building and maintaining weapons systems, training military forces, replacing equipment destroyed in conflicts, and rebuilding after wars. So we developed a different approach, Chen continued. Strength through superior preparation and tactical awareness. We invest our resources in intelligence gathering, analytical capabilities, and adaptive training. The result is security teams that can handle any situation without ever needing to fire a shot. Prime Intellect. Veltar's optical sensors had been recording everything. You have created the ultimate defensive capability, the ability to end any threat while maintaining perfect diplomatic relations. That's the goal, Ambassador Vasquez confirmed. Humans learned that the best way to win a war is to prevent it from starting. And the best way to prevent wars is to make everyone understand that nobody actually wants to fight you. War Chief Thok was staring at Morrison and Chen with something approaching awe. Your species has achieved what the Gorlans have sought. For millennia, the ability to command respect without needing to prove dominance through combat. With one crucial difference, Morrison pointed out. We didn't achieve it by being stronger than everyone else. We achieved it by being smarter. Combat Prime Xeris's mechanical form seemed to slump slightly. The Nexathian Empire has spent centuries developing superior warfare technology. Our combat capabilities exceed most civilizations by several orders of magnitude. Yet you have rendered all of our advantages irrelevant through simple preparation and intelligence. Not irrelevant, Chen corrected. Different. Your combat capabilities are impressive and serve important purposes. But they're designed for situations where someone has already decided that violence is necessary. We specialize in situations where violence hasn't been decided yet. High Commander Zixthera felt her warrior drones relaxing as her hive mind processed the revelation. The humans have created a new category of military capability, not superior firepower, not enhanced biology, not advanced technology, superior understanding. Understanding is the foundation of everything we do, Ambassador Vasquez explained. Understanding our own capabilities, understanding others' capabilities, understanding how situations develop and how they can be influenced. Morrison checked his chronometer. Speaking of understanding, we should probably get back to the actual peace negotiations. The territorial disputes won't resolve themselves. As the delegates returned to their seats, the atmosphere in the Grand Assembly Hall had fundamentally changed. The humans were no longer seen as naive newcomers who didn't understand galactic realities. They were now recognized as potentially the most dangerous species in the galaxy, precisely because they had learned how to be dangerous without appearing threatening. The peace treaty that emerged from the first Galactic Peace Summit was unprecedented in its scope and effectiveness, not because everyone agreed on everything, but because everyone understood that disagreement didn't have to lead to conflict. The humans had demonstrated that there were always more options available than most species realized, and from that day forward, when galactic diplomats saw unarmed human security guards, they knew they were looking at beings who had mastered the most sophisticated warfare of all, the kind that made actual warfare unnecessary. The galaxy had just learned that the most dangerous predators are often the ones who have evolved beyond the need to show their teeth, but they still have them, and they know exactly how to use them. End of story. The Silent Protocol. When being harmless and being defenseless are two completely different things.